Good morning, Sangha. It's really great to see all of you, and I can't express enough how anxious I am, even though I am attempting to live in the moment, in the COVID moment, but I am so anxious for us to be able to be interacting in person at the temple, in fellowship with one another. And it's nice. One of the things that's very important to me is in the Sangha is to see people's eyes, because I see the eyes are the window to the soul, and I get the opportunity to see into each and every one of you as I speak. And this is just not the same, okay? I mean, we have Jeremy and his dog, and I can see into the dog's eyes, okay? Yes, but it's not the same. So hopefully in the near future, we will be able to meet in person at the temple. That will be a board decision, and I look forward to it. Let's begin today with the Three Refuges. If you have your books in front of you, let's go to those. It's actually on page 7 in the ritual books. We say together, I go for refuge to Buddha, my deeply awakened mind, the living source of understanding and compassion, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to Dharma, the path of mindful living, leading to healing, joy, and enlightenment, the way of peace, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the loving and supportive community of practice, realizing harmony, awareness, and liberation, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I am aware that the three jewels are within my heart. I vow to realize them. I vow to understand living beings and their suffering. I vow to cultivate loving kindness and compassion, and to practice joy and equanimity. I vow to live simply and sanely, content with few possessions, and to keep my body healthy. I vow to let go of all worry and anxiety in order to be light and free. I am aware that I owe so much to my parents, teachers, friends, and all beings. I vow to be worthy of their trust, to practice wholeheartedly, so that understanding and compassion will flower, and I can help living beings be freed from their suffering. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. And now we will turn to page 8, and we'll recite together the Heart Sutra. Maha Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. The Bodhisattva of great compassion, from the deep practice of prajna paramita, perceived the emptiness of all 5 skandhas and delivered all beings from their suffering. O Shariputra, all dharmas are empty. They are not born nor annihilated. They are not defiled nor immaculate. They do not increase nor decrease. So in emptiness, no form, no feeling, no thought, no impulse, no consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind. No realm of sight, no realm of consciousness. No ignorance, nor extinction of ignorance, no old age and death, nor extinction of them. No suffering, no cause of suffering, no cease from suffering, no path to lead out of suffering, no knowledge, no attainment, no realization, for there is nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva holds on to nothing but prajna paramita. Therefore, the mind is clear of any delusive hindrance. Without hindrance, there is no fear. Away from all perverted views, one reaches final nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future, through faith in prajna paramita, attain to the highest perfect enlightenment. Know then the prajna paramita is the great tyranny, the radiant peerless mantram, the utmost supreme mantram, which is capable of allaying all pain. This is true beyond all doubt. Proclaim now the highest wisdom, the prajna paramita. Gate, gate, hara gate, hara samgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, hara gate, hara samgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, hara gate, hara samgate, bodhisvaha. Maha Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. Well, Robert, I almost got through it. Over the past month or so, our Dharma talks have been focused on social justice and appropriate Buddhist responses to the situations we are currently being faced with and have been faced with throughout history. Now, today we are going to shift our attention a little bit to what it takes, the great effort, as it were, to garner the ability to adequately administer those responses as Buddhists on the path. The title of today's Dharma talk is The Heroics of Buddhism. Now, you typically don't hear those two words in the same sentence, heroics and Buddhism. However, I believe that, and I mentioned this in an earlier Dharma talk, there is knowing Buddhism, and then there is doing Buddhism, which takes more effort, and then there is being Buddhism, which requires heroic effort, moment by moment, day by day, as we go through our lives in this realm. You see, there was a reason that Master Dogen admonished us to practice, quote, like our hair was on fire. Some of us don't have to worry about that. But we were admonished by Master Dogen, practice like your hair is on fire. Now, it was not because he felt a sense of urgency in our relieving the suffering of all sentient beings. It was not so we could ferry across sentient beings to the other shore. That was not the reason for Master Dogen's sense of urgency. If you've read much of Master Dogen, and if you haven't, I encourage you. He is much more of the Soto tradition, but I love Master Dogen's writings, and they are deep and they are full, and I think you would appreciate them. His reason, if you read more of Master Dogen, I believe, was to express the urgency in preparing ourselves, engaging in the type of consistent self-care and effort through our practice to be able to accomplish our individual Buddhist and personal goals as practitioners on this path. Now, I must confess that, quite frankly, I am the last person who should be delivering a Dharma talk this morning on self-care. I am currently ill, which makes it really good that we're at a distance. I recently had a suicide attempt, not mine, in my condo, and was confronted there by an intoxicated person who truly wanted to die. I had to pry a razor blade out of this person's right hand while a policeman had to pry open their right arm to put pressure on a wound that was spurting blood all over. I had to deal with the paramedics, the other policemen that came to the scene. And after the last police officer had spoken with me, and he was actually someone that I knew, I stood, he left, and then I just stood in the hallway, surveying the damage, the blood everywhere. And I just cried. I just cried. I was so defeated, demoralized, discouraged, distressed. All I could do in that moment was to weep. A dear friend came to help me clean up everything as best we could. And we spent 8 hours cleaning up all the blood, throwing away everything that couldn't be salvaged. And then, after we did that, I was involved in putting the condo up for sale. It did sell. Thank you for your good wishes. Packing up everything that I owned, moving, unpacking, which I'm still doing, being ill while all of this was going on, and sitting here today to share the Dharma with all of you. During this time, my practice has suffered, and I have engaged in an epic failure regarding self-care. So this morning, I am talking as much to myself as to any of you. It is my hope and my desire that you are all engaging in self-care. To that end, I am using as a resource for this Dharma talk the book Entering the Mind of Buddha, Zen and the 6 Heroic Practices of Bodhisattvas. Now, in this book, which I would highly recommend, for anyone practicing the path, not just bodhisattvas, but in the future it will be required reading for those in bodhisattva training. Reb Anderson outlines in details the 6 paramitas that bodhisattvas commit to in their vows. But not only are they for bodhisattvas, they are necessary for each and every one of us as we engage the Buddhist path. And they are a very large part of self-care. These paramitas, which Anderson refers to as heroic in nature, are interconnected. They rely on one another for support and are a complete package, and they resemble actually a Dharma wheel. And in that Dharma wheel is a hub. As in any wheel, there's a hub that spokes go out from that hub. That hub is compassion. Great compassion is the ground of perfect wisdom. And the teachings of the Buddhas are about how we purify and deepen our practice of compassion. Now, the first three paramitas are founded in kindness and compassion, and are developed and conveyed with increasing skill to bring benefit to living beings, beings who are suffering, including ourselves. Excuse me. The second three paramitas, where we develop this heroic effort, concentration, and wisdom, go beyond benefiting living beings to liberating them. So see, we're switching from the first three, which are to benefit living beings, sentient beings, to the second three, where we are developing the skills to liberate them from their suffering. The perfection of wisdom, or prajna paramita, we just recited the prajna paramita hridaya, perfects the other five paramitas. Now, these six paramitas are as follows. Number one, generosity or giving, which is dana paramita. The second is ethical discipline, which is shila paramita. The third is patience. The third paramita is patience, kshanti paramita. Now remember, these three paramitas are founded in kindness and compassion, and are developed and conveyed with increasing skill to bring benefits to living beings. Number four is heroic effort, which is vira paramita. Number five is concentration, meditative concentration, which is virya paramita. Excuse me. Concentration is dhyana, dhyana, D-H-Y-A-N-A, paramita. And then the sixth one is perfect wisdom, paramita, which is the prajna, paramita. Heroic effort, concentration, and perfect wisdom are developed is where we develop heroic effort, concentration, and wisdom, going beyond benefiting sentient beings to liberating them from their suffering. Please note those two differences because they're very, very important. Most of the time we understand, excuse me, our Buddhist practice as being for the benefit, for the help of all sentient beings. But these last three paramitas, heroic effort, concentration, and perfect wisdom, go beyond that to the Buddhist practice of liberation of living beings. Now, in all six of these paramitas, never lose sight of the fact that these sentient beings we're talking about include ourselves. We cannot avoid ourselves in our Buddhist practice. We must include it. Now, I'd like to talk a bit, not a lot, but a bit about each of these paramitas. We'll start with the first three. Dana paramita is the first practice, giving, generosity. Dana paramita. Generosity comes to life in the world of living beings by welcoming them and by being gracious to them and to us. In whatever circumstances arise, as those circumstances arise in the moment. Not an hour ago, not 3 hours from now, in this very moment. Other words for generosity include giving, graciousness, and welcoming. One of the things that brings me much joy when we're meeting together as a Sangha is how welcoming we tend to be as a Sangha. When there are new people that come in, regardless of station in life or color or creed or race or religion, we are a welcoming Sangha. Many of you may not know that in not only our Sangha and our community, but in reaches outside of our Sangha, we have a reputation that I've become aware of as a welcoming and inclusive Sangha. In the training of generosity, we focus on giving and receiving our life and our practice wholeheartedly, and on offering our life and our practice as a gift. Think about that. Your generosity, your giving, your dana paramita in action is a wonderful, wonderful gift that you bestow on yourself and on other sentient beings. And as the practice develops, we come to understand that every arising and ceasing, every arising and ceasing is a gift. It doesn't matter. We can have our cherished opinions about whether it's good or bad. That's irrelevant. Every arising and ceasing is a gift if given in the attitude of generosity and graciousness. When we are gracious and generous, we become fully grounded in the way things really are. In the Buddhist teachings, we are told that the only reality is direct experience, and that whatever is happening, it is just as it is, period. There are no stories we can make up about it and still be on the path. No suppositions, no hypotheses. It simply exists as it is. And through generosity, the dana paramita, it is a gift. When our giving fully flowers, opens up like the lotus flower, it becomes perfect wisdom. The second practice, ethical discipline. This is known as Shila Paramita. Now, ethical discipline focuses on being attentive to all our actions of body, speech, and thought. Ethics is about responding with attention, focused attention, care, and tenderness. Not only tenderness to animate objects, including ourselves, but even tenderness to inanimate objects. My housemate, excuse me, has a house full of living plants. And I love to watch her working with her plants. She talks to her plants. She touches, caresses the plants, faithfully nourishes them with water, fertilizer, makes sure they have good sun. That's tenderness. And that is a major part of our ethical discipline. It is to be upright. Ethical discipline is to be upright, without concern for personal gain or personal loss. It's giving without paying attention to, well, what do I have to gain here? What's in it for me? Or, well, what do I have to give up here? I mean, how much is too much here? Ethical discipline has no concern with those things. All of the great Bodhisattva practices are encompassed in the precepts of ethical training. In fact, those who take the Bodhisattva vows include a commitment to ethical discipline, to Shila paramita in those vows. The third practice is patience. It's the Kshanti Paramita. Now, patience, I love this definition of patience. Patience is the ability to sit calmly in the center of all suffering. Please notice it does not say, in the presence of all suffering, do nothing and sit calmly. No, it just says you have the ability to sit calmly in the presence of all suffering, regardless of the circumstances. We sit calmly. Other words for patience include perseverance, endurance, forbearance, and tolerance. Patience is not waiting for the suffering to go away. It is not attempting to control our experience. Patience is not trying to get away from physical and emotional discomfort. Over the past month, when I've been going through all that I've been going through, I desperately wanted to get away from the physical and emotional discomfort and knew, no, I'm Koe. In your practice, you have committed to sit calmly in the middle of it. One of the most difficult challenges I had faced, and one of the best practices for me to go through. The practice of patience is supported by generosity and ethics, and in turn, patience protects generosity and ethics. We will need great patience to enter into the next three paramitas of heroic effort, concentration, and wisdom, because these are the three that are involved in our ability to engage in the liberation of sentient beings. So the fourth practice then is heroic effort. Virya Paramita. Now, heroic effort is two things. It's energetic. It would have to be heroic. You'd have to put some energy into it. And it's joyful about the Bodhisattva work of realizing unsurpassed, complete, and perfect awakening for the welfare and liberation of the world. Other words for heroic effort are enthusiasm, diligence, vigor, energy, and I love this one, joyful endeavor. This practice includes developing and renewing, because it's if we're not careful, our batteries get low and they need to be recharged, renewed. Renewing our energy to work wholeheartedly with all the other paramitas. We need energy to train in the first three perfections, and we will need even greater and more heroic energy to practice the last two. So training in heroic effort is a pivotal point in the process of Bodhisattva training. It is a point at which we pivot from the first three practices which bring benefit to beings and turn toward the practice of concentration and wisdom, in which we begin probing incrementally the nature of reality with the intention for the liberation of sentient beings. The fifth practice, concentration, dhyana paramita. Now, in the Zen tradition, and my foundations come from the Soto Zen tradition, in the Zen tradition, concentration means that having a mind that is tranquil, focused, and able to deeply contemplate all, keyword, all phenomena. That's not an easy task, and that's why it requires heroic effort. It is a state of awareness, acute awareness, that is undistracted from the Bodhisattva intention of living for the welfare of all. Our Bodhisattva concentration develops in the service of the vow to save all sentient beings. It is infused with generosity, ethical discipline, patience, and joyful effort. The perfection of concentration arises simultaneously with the perfection of wisdom. We often use the words concentration and meditation interchangeably, because both of these truths include two aspects of practice. One is focusing our attention and becoming tranquil. The other is contemplating the teachings and other phenomena in a state of tranquility. So, in the background of this discussion of concentration and meditation, there are Sanskrit words which may be familiar or not, but we read them all the time: dhyana, samadhi, samatha, vipassana, and prajna. All of those words are interchangeable. Now we come to the sixth practice, prajna paramita. This is the capstone of the six heroic paramitas, the perfection of wisdom. Any of us who have been on this path for any period of time fully understand that prajna paramita is a never-ending practice. At no point can any one of us say, I've arrived. That is the reason that it is not wise to ever refer to ourselves as an enlightened being. We are all in a stage of enlightenment. We are enlightening. students on the path. So while the first three paramitas ground us in conventional truth, perfect wisdom, the perfection of wisdom, does not abandon conventional truth. It depends on becoming intimate with the other five paramitas, with the foundation presented and developed by the first five paramitas. The prajna paramita, the perfection of wisdom, is the profound understanding of our true nature and the true nature of other living beings. Prajna paramita constantly evolves and is always fresh. Why? Because our circumstances, the circumstances in which we live, in which we find ourselves, in which are presented to us on an ongoing basis, are ever changing circumstances. They are not constant. Remember, nothing is permanent. Everything is always changing, always unfolding, always evolving. Prajna paramita constantly evolves, and it is an intimate face-to-face conversation. Now listen to this. Prajna paramita, the perfection of a wisdom, is an ongoing, intimate, face-to-face conversation with all beings. All beings. There is no distinction. In many of my Dharma talks, I have discussed the notion of 0 degrees of separation between any of us. Excuse me. At one time in a Dharma talk, I read Thich Nhat Hanh's poem, Please Call Me by My True Names. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to look it up online and read it. Because he talks about that zero degrees of separation. He talks about prajna paramita, the perfection of wisdom, being that ongoing, intimate conversation with all beings. He talks about being the hostage slave girl whose parents are thrown overboard on a boat that is commanded by pirates. He talks about being the pirate. He talks about all of those killed in senseless and maimed, physically, psychologically, mentally, in wars. And he talks about being the seller of the weapons that perpetuate those wars, and being the evil, what we call evil warlords that call for these wars. So when we're having this prajna paramita, the perfection of wisdom, deeply imbued within our beings, we are having an intimate conversation with all beings. Please, if you don't remember anything else from this conversation this morning, remember that. The 6 heroic paramitas within us are always rising and falling. They are not constant at any point in time. They're similar, however, if we pay attention to them, to a lotus flower, where there is a seed that becomes saturated with water, sinks deep down into the mud, where it pops open, develops a shoot that rises to the surface of the water, creates a bud that then opens up into a beautiful lotus flower. At night, the lotus flower closes up. In morning, the lotus flower opens up again. When the time for that lotus flower to leave this realm happens, the stem wilts, it goes back into the water, where it releases a pod of seeds. When that pod of seeds becomes saturated, it bursts open, releasing all of these other seeds, and guess what happens? They drift down to the bottom, to the mud, and once again, out of that mud rises a lotus flower. Just as our lives are cyclical in nature, these 6 practices, these 6 paramitas, the heroic measures required not to know Buddhism, not to do Buddhism, but to become Buddhism, is likewise cyclical in nature. Our practices ebb and they flow, but are always present if we ourselves are present. When we consider including these practices, these 6 heroic paramitas in our everyday lives, it is clearly understood why they are referred to as heroic. Why all of you here today are heroes as Buddhists. Because it takes a heroic effort to become that mindful in each and every moment and in each and every encounter with ourselves and with others. May you develop and engage your own heroic efforts with these 6 paramitas as you move throughout your world, your encounters, and your life. We will close today with the closing gathas. Those would be on page 9 if you're looking at your books. We will start with the Gotha of Attainment, followed with the Gotha of Compassion, and then end with the 4 Bodhisattva vows. And we say together, for all unskillful action ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thoughts, now I atone for them all. Vast is the robe of compassion, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Buddha's teachings for the benefit of all sentient beings. All beings, one body, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passions, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates without number, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate your presence.